JJK265 is here. Prepare yourselves, get ready, strap in, spoilers beware, hold up. Let's go. Alright, so we kick things off with the editor's note, which says Itadori expands his domain, but just what is this place? Alright, so the chapter begins, page 1, with Yuji and Sukuna walking around together at this train station that we saw them in at the end of the previous chapter. And if you'll recall, Sukuna is in his Yuji form. So there's a lot of yapping here, bear with me, but they're basically just talking to each other. Sukuna says, I've experienced this before, this rare phenomena of connecting with a sorcerer during the height of battle. I had thought that it was a side effect of some sort due to cursed energy being born from humans. Yet, this is something different. What is this, your domain? Yuji says, enough chatter. I did this a little frantically. I don't really get it either. Then Yuji says, I just wanted time to talk to you. Just indulge me for 1 second. Oh, check it out, the demon's sword dance statue. And Yuji says this as they're walking by a statue. I presume this is like a famous statue, or at least a well-known one. And Sukuna says, I wouldn't know it. And Yuji says, don't worry. No one besides the locals here would know about it. Their conversation continues on page 2 as they continue to walk together. Yuji says, I lived here until I was 6 or 7 and moved to Sendai. I was born in Sendai, we just lived here for my grandpa's work. I came back here for the first time in like 10 years for a funeral, friend of my grandpa's. Yuji then continues, I wouldn't say it was a ghost town, but it did surprise me how empty the place felt. Actually, I guess I wasn't that surprised, and if I'm being honest, I kind of expected it. It didn't really shake me. Meanwhile, Sukuna is just silent during all of this. Yuji then continues to say, I wonder if that guy would have come to my grandpa's funeral if my grandpa had died first. Next, the walk and talk continues with Yuji and Sukuna walking by what looks to be a playground, and Yuji says, this is the park I used to hang out at the most, and all of the play equipment is pretty much gone, but I thought I was gonna die after I stubbed my toe on the swing set one time, so I'm not too mad about it. And then one time, as he points to a water fountain, I tried to clean off some slime I found in the sand, but it just went down the drain, so I cried. Yuji then points to some nearby flowers and says, oh, a morning glory. And Sukuna says, that's a hydrangea, you moron. And Yuji says, oh yeah, I know, careless mistake. But a ton of these bloom here, huh? I really only noticed after I moved to Sendai. I wonder who's in charge of deciding the foliage for each town. And he goes, wait, Sukuna, you know the different flowers? Sukuna then pauses for a second and says, I learned them from Megami's memories. And Yuji says, oh, right. But hey, wait, wouldn't that mean you already know about this whole place from my memories when you were in my body? And Sukuna says, I didn't waste my time going through memories like that. Yuji says, I see, as he bends down near some water, and he says, now this park was pretty far from my house, but at least you can catch some crayfish here. You should try it out, Sukuna, as Yuji tries to catch one, unless the strongest sorcerer in history can't catch some crayfish. And Sukuna is just silent, but then he makes a quick move, and Yuji goes, whoa! We then see a panel of 2 crayfish, one that each of them have caught, and one is much larger than the other. So Sukuna says, yours is practically microscopic. And Yuji says, well, you got an American crayfish. Japanese ones are way more rare. And Sukuna says, what did you just say? And Yuji goes, you heard me. We then cut to the 2 of them continuing to walk and talk, now passing a department store. And Yuji says, this is the store that opened when I was 5. Thanks to this thing, all the mom and pop shops vanished. It got kind of quiet with all the small businesses closing down, but they opened a movie theater upstairs, so I considered it even. Yuji then goes on to say, it's a pretty natureless place here, but don't worry, there's a lot more green once you leave the town a bit. And Sukuna says, I'm not exactly holding my breath for anything here. We then continue, and they've now made it out of the city a little bit, and Yuji says, see, green as far as the eye can see. I used to catch grasshoppers in the rice fields here until the cage was about to burst. Haven't seen many of them lately, though. Maybe pesticides got really advanced? Sukuna is silent for a moment before just saying, is this going anywhere? And Yuji says, hold on, just hold on, I still have some places I want to go. Yuji then says, wow, as they walk up towards a couple of horses at a horse stable, and he says, horses are so awesome. No matter how many times I see them, their heads are always bigger than I remember. My grandpa used to take me to this farm every so often, and I guess now that I think about it, he did a lot of parenting in my mom and dad's place. And I guess this farm is more of like an amusement center for families because Yuji also walks up and says, "This place used to serve the best soft serve ice cream ever. I spent my whole allowance on it one day, and I ate too much and actually ended up throwing up." And Sukuna says, "Was that the day your brainlessness began?" And Yuji says, "Oh, let's go over here and do some archery." We then cut to them actually shooting at some archery targets, and Yuji says, "Hot damn, something about playing with you isn't really actually that fun." And Sukuna says, "Isn't it obvious that I would be better suited to this than you would be?" And Yuji says, "Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot you're from the era of actual archery." We then see it cut to outside the stable where there's now a ton of snow on the ground and snow falling from the sky. And Yuji says, "You'd see snow sculpture after snow sculpture lined up here during the snow festival in the wintertime. I wonder if they still do that. We did the same thing in Sendai, but it doesn't really snow there much. And it just doesn't feel like winter unless the snow really piles up." We then kind of have a flashback to an adolescent Yuji sitting at a table with his grandfather blowing on a hot tea beverage to cool it down. And Yuji says, "I always loved drinking sweet milk tea after my hands had gotten numb from shoveling snow all day. But my grandpa just always looked at me like I was crazy because he only drank black coffee." And then the grandpa says, "Ugh, that stuff will just make your mouth all sticky." We then cut to like a 6 or 7 year old Yuji who's wearing a beanie, and he says, "Once it got closer to Christmas, I would always hear these bells at night, and that really made me think that Santa existed. But when I was older, way later, I realized it was just the sound of snow chains on car tires." At this point, Sukuna is fed up. He says, "All right, that's enough." And Yuji says, "Okay, okay, like I pretty much showed you everything I wanted to, I guess." And Sukuna cuts him off and says, "Your blathering is disgusting. Just say what you want to say." And Yuji says, "All right, up until recently, I thought that I should simply live to fulfill my role as I understood it. I thought if I died like that, I could at least consider it a proper death. But now I know that that's not exactly right." Yuji then continues by saying, walking the dog or raising a family, any sort of role like that is just fine. And even if you don't have something like that, as long as you have, something to eat and somewhere to sleep, and even if you're stuck in bed sick, even if you have no real connections and nothing remains of you, just the tiny fragments of memories that make up a person drifting elsewhere can give value to human life. And as Yuji is saying this, it is a double page spread of 6 different people that Yuji has lost. It's his grandpa, Junpei, Nanami, Nobara, Choso, and Gojo. Yuji continues and he says, "The value has nothing to do with how someone dies, and I couldn't ever forgive anyone who acted as if that value didn't exist. Sukuna, I loathe you. People aren't tools. We aren't born with any set role, and I have no clue whether or not we're fundamentally good or evil." Yuji then says, "Maybe I'm wrong, but I thought I should at least just let you see the humanity of someone else other than yourself, of someone you see no value in." And Sukuna just stares him dead in the eye and says, "I don't feel a thing. And don't get me wrong, Brad, I understand everything you're trying to say. And even after that, I still don't feel anything. The same way you accepted the decline of the city by saying, well, that was probably always going to be the case. So what?" Yuji says, "No dice, huh? Should have figured." Sukuna says, "Suffice it to say, I'm dumbfounded by how much of a coward you are." We then see Sukuna have a realization and he says, "Wait, are you pitying me? Are you trying to show me sympathy?" Yuji's eyes then narrow and go cold and he says, "That's right, Sukuna. I have the ability to kill you right now, so release Megami and come back to my body. And if you do, I'll spare your life." Sukuna then gets pissed and he says, "You have made a grave, severe miscalculation. I won't stop at simply mincing you to bits. I am going to slaughter each and every human being you claim to have oh so much value right in front of your eyes." And the editor's note says, "A refusal burning with fury," and that is where the chapter ends. And did I say chapter because I meant yapter? Because that's what this was, but I say that with no disrespect. I love this chapter. It is so cool to get this stroll down memory lane as Yuji trying to give Sukuna a glimpse at the value of humanity, but we knew he wasn't going to take it, and so now it's on. But we are going into a break week, so we're going to have to wait for this 1v1 showdown. All right, y'all. I think I'm going to have to call it a night there and let all of this marinate, and we will be discussing it in the coming days. But thank you guys so much for bearing with me on this longer dialogue heavy chapter. I really appreciate it, and I will see you guys soon. And definitely let me know your thoughts down below.